Today's video is sponsored by DC-20. To put it simply, in my opinion, DC-20 is better than any other TTRPG system that is out right now. Using a new 4-action point system, it makes combat more interesting, fluid, and dynamic. A success system that rewards rolling high with greater successes, more damage, discovering more clues. A revolutionary dynamic spellcasting system that makes spell collision and spellcaster dueling a reality. But my absolute favorite is the new martial systems. DC-20 gives all martial classes a resource system called stamina points, the ability to use maneuvers to customize and enhance their attacks, and access to powerful techniques that allow for epic feats of their strength and agility. No more boring, I attack twice turns. Character creation is more open and customizable than ever. You can create the character you have always been trying to create with this unique class and ancestry system. All Kickstarter backers get access to the beta of DC-20 immediately when the Kickstarter ends. Click the link in the description below. And now what you're here for. D&D group complains about easy encounters and learns a valuable lesson. So this isn't your typical RPG horror story. I can admit I am absolutely in the wrong here, and I am the bad guy. Though I do keep this on hand for a dungeon for players who want to face it. The circumstances of its creation were crappy on my part, and a complete overreaction on my part as well, to a group who said my game was too easy. Basically, the player group called my game too easy and not challenging at all, and I chose to be a prick about it, creating an extremely deadly dungeon as their next quest, which ended in a TPK, and the end of my involvement with that group, which was totally understandable and their choice. So around 4 years ago, I was running D&D 5e for a group of college friends. The plan was to run an adventuring group of heroes out on personal quests to reclaim legendary relics and scripts. There were 4 of them. Rogue, an assassin archetype adventuring to find a legendary assassin's blade. The player loved finding hidden passages and doors, as well as creative ways to get the drop on enemies. Cleric, a life domain cleric adventuring to find the lost home of their goddess. This player was all about finding interesting mechanics and enjoyed puzzles and traps, and often came across as a bit rough around the edges with communication. Barbarian, a zealot archetype in search of his deity's ancient champion, said to be sleeping somewhere in the lands. The player was all about party dynamics and roleplay opportunities, but also enjoyed seeing how much damage they could do. Paladin, an oathbreaker bent on recovering a relic of his former deity in order to be welcomed back and allowed to change their oath. Often enjoyed digging through world lore and finding unique or homebrewed items, locations, and creatures. I'm going to start off by saying that I absolutely loved their reasons for adventuring, and had worked hard with them over the course of several days to create their characters. Over the course of the campaign, I wanted to make them feel like heroes, like their choices mattered. We developed a bit of a back and forth with ribbing each other and roasting in character, which was always in good fun. Occasionally, they would say that the encounters seemed to be getting easier, so I tweaked the difficulty for the next fight, always throwing in a couple of difficult ones every so often so they didn't get bored. The gameplay was mostly taking place through exploration of the world, though, and combat wasn't really a strong focus, but it was present. They adventured until around level 14, where they started closing in on the locations for what they were seeking. Throughout the campaign, they had taken an interest in the roleplay in the towns, and as a party had really come together as a group of friends after only initially surviving together because it was more convenient and easier as a collective. In-game, Paladin and Rogue started a romance. In one of the prior sessions, they had gotten a lead on the assassin's blade, which was hidden in an ever-changing labyrinth located somewhere in the astral plane. Through some clever teamwork and the use of a few spells, they made their way to the maze and spent several sessions getting through it. At the heart of the maze, though, was where they found the blade and their next encounter. A family of green dragons, 4 adults, 2 ancient, and a handful of juveniles. Through creative use of their items and spells, they cleared the encounter and retrieved their prize. After the session, though, all 4 asked me if that was really the best I could do as a DM for a challenging encounter. Rogue claimed that a group of dragons that powerful was child's play for their group, and that they'd hardly taken any damage. Barbarian and Paladin agreed in short order, simply saying that the combat was too easy for them. In defense of both sides, I had not rolled high that night for anything the dragons did. They needed to make a saving throw. I failed a few times before getting one success. On the rare occasion an attack hit, the damage dice did not want to roll high. Everyone has these moments when they play for long enough, and it leads to a bit of humor. However, The one who was most vocal about the ease of the game was the cleric. "We're not taking much damage," cleric said in a deadpan. "Ever since we hit level 7, it's been really hard for you to do anything to us. We're basically gods, and this whole campaign is just far too easy." "All right," I had said. "You want more challenging? I can make that happen." "Oh, please. Even your most evil creations couldn't be that difficult for us. The rest of this will be a walk in the park. You suck as a combat DM." Cleric replied, "And if you do manage to make it challenging for us, I'll eat my character sheet." I asked the others if they agreed, and sadly they did. Here is where I become the asshole, because this did not feel like our usual light-hearted ribbing due to the cleric's words. To the credit of Rogue and Barbarian and Paladin, they phrased it a bit more gently than the cleric had. I told them I'd be sure the next one would be more challenging. So I told them that the next few sessions would be time in the town for furthering their research and locating the next item while I built the next combat dungeon. Before I continue, I can hear you saying, "Hey, it's reasonable for a DM to rise to a challenge like that. Cleric seems like a bit of an asshole here, not you." I agree, that cleric was definitely an asshole in this moment of communication, and while adjusting my difficulty for encounters is justified, the extent I adjusted was taking it too far for the situation. Continue listening, and you'll see what I mean. Literally the day after the session, I was scrolling on social media and came across a screenshotted post from Tumblr proposing the idea of a dungeon full of mimics, with the treasure hoard inside at the end being one giant mimic. Admittedly, it is a good idea for a dungeon. However, in hindsight, I shouldn't have taken it and gone as overboard as I had. I came up with a horrible, awful idea suitable for a dastardly Grinch and set to putting the idea together. The end result was the dungeon I refer to as Mimic Mountain. The next session, after chasing down a few more clues, the party narrowed down the location of Paladin's object to a small, lonely mountain on an island not too far off the coast, an easy 2-day voyage by boat. The session ended when they set foot on the shore, and our next session was set for the middle of spring break. I suggested we take that day as a chance to play a longer session, considering combat would take a while, and I wanted them to get through it to the twist ending. "Please, we all know that it won't take the full day to clear the dungeon and get our item, DM," the cleric chuckled. "Then, if you clear it as quickly as you think you will, I have stuff prepared for a few sessions ahead that I can use," I responded nonchalantly. The others agreed that a full day of D&D sounded like fun, so we parted ways. I was looking forward to them experiencing the hardest encounter I had cooked up to date. Finally, the day of the session rolled around, and they entered the cave mouth on the side of the cliff. As they traveled through the caves and rooms, everything they encountered was a mimic. The chair on the floor? Mimic. The door? Mimic. The potion sitting on a shelf? You guessed it, mimic. They finally made it to the deepest room of the dungeon, where Paladin's item was sitting on a pedestal. Upon touching it, turns out, yes, it was indeed a mimic. So was the pedestal and a few of the decorations in the room. By the end of it all, their health had taken a beating, and they were sore for a rest. However, the final twist was yet to come. All of a sudden, the mountain began shaking. We entered a party skill check sequence to escape the mountain proper before it collapsed. All 4 made it out, only to see an eye open on the cliff face, and the mountain itself rose up, revealing itself to be a mimic of mountainous proportions. Stuck between its teeth, the players could see Paladin's quest item. They popped the last of their healing potions and readied for the fight. During the fight, I rolled really well, and it was over in a few rounds. Their party completely wiped out, and nothing short of a miracle would bring them back to defeat the mountain. Needless to say, everyone was pissed. Accusations began flying of fudging dice rolls, despite my rolls being open for all to see. Accusations of loaded dice and unfair tactics were thrown as well, before the cleric scowled and called me an asshole. They all tried to excuse what they had said as part of the light-hearted ribbing that we usually give each other. "Now hold on," I had said. "I'm not saying the campaign is over. I figured this would happen. So you plan to kill us and end the campaign over us calling your encounters too easy?" Barbarian demanded. "I plan for the possibility of a TPK here, but the campaign is not." "So you did it on purpose. You are an asshole," Cleric spat angrily. "You're the one who said that you were basically a god in-game, and I couldn't possibly make anything challenging. I wanted to rise to the challenge, and it seems I did a little too well," I said a bit smugly. "Dude, even I think that was overkill," Paladin said as they packed their stuff. "Maybe it was, but for next session, I was thinking we could—" "There won't be a next session. We're out." "That was too far," Rogue said. Plus, our characters are dead. 0 HP, 3 failed death saves apiece. With that, they left and stopped talking to me. I do admit that I went a little too far here. But my plan for, if it did kill them, was to have them explore the realm of death and meet the one the barbarian was looking for, finding their way back to life at the moment they died, full health, fully rested, and ready to resume the fight. Despite that backup plan, I know I went a bit overboard on Mimic Mountain. I still love the dungeon, and hold it in reserve for any of my future players who want to take it on. But now it comes with the disclaimer that the final twist is cruel and evil, and I tell them why it was first made. Cleric, rogue, barbarian, paladin, if any of you are listening to this, you are right, I did go overboard when making Mimic Mountain. And though I'm not sorry I made it, I am sorry I didn't discuss the probability of a TPK and what to do after. And I should have handled it better. I hope you're all still friends with each other and still have a love for the game despite my shittiness here. To any DMs who wish to use the dungeon, I recommend only pouring everything into it if that's what you and your players have discussed wanting. I made the dungeon out of trying too hard to make something to make Cleric eat their words, not their character sheet, of my campaign being too easy, and without discussing the player group how they felt about the possibility of a TPK and what to do if one happened. Have that discussion with your players before doing any of this. I'm happy to say that I've learned from my mistakes, and I'm now DMing for a few new groups of players with a more level-headed and responsible mindset than I used to have. Honestly, it sounds like the DM did exactly what the players wanted him to do, and I absolutely love the twist about needing to die to find the other relic. From my perspective, it doesn't look like the DM did anything wrong. Do you think the DM went too far? Did the players get what they deserved? Tell me what you think in a comment down below. Before we take our leave, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, All Things D&D. Stay tuned for more amazing Dungeons & Dragons content every week.